While I keep her busy, you head over to her place and change the locks." Those words hit my ears like a toxic whisper right in the middle of my birthday lunch. Sarah, my daughter, was leaning across the table, speaking right into the ear of her husband, Kevin. They figured I wouldn't hear them over the restaurant's murmur and the clinking of glasses. They figured I was too busy cutting my slice of chocolate cake, smiling for the endless photos my niece, Chloe, insisted on taking. But I heard. And the worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how casual they were about it, like they were ordering coffee or talking about the snow. As if stripping me of my home, the only thing I had built with my own hands over 40 years, was as simple as changing the channel. Kevin nodded. I saw his eyes flick toward me for a split second, checking that I hadn't clued in. Then he got up from the table with some excuse I didn't even bother to register. Something about running to the bank, an urgent errand, back in a bit. Sarah smiled and squeezed my hand across the white tablecloth. "Mum, you look radiant, 70 years old, and you look 50. Lies wrapped in cheap flattery. I watched him walk away, weaving through the tables, pulling his car keys from his pocket. He glanced back at our table one last time. Sarah raised her glass of white wine, a silent toast between them, a signal that the plan was in motion. 50 minutes. That's how long it took him to come back. In that time, Sarah put on a performance, entertaining me with an almost theatrical dedication. She showed me photos of my grandkids on her phone, even though I see them every week. She asked about my health, if I'd refilled my prescriptions, if I needed help with the weekly groceries. Every question was a calculated distraction, every smile, a perfectly rehearsed mask. Chloe, my niece, was also at the table. She knew nothing, that much was obvious. She was chatting away about her new job at the university, about a trip she was planning to Cancun, completely innocent and oblivious to the drama unfolding right in front of her. I played along. I nodded, laughed at the right moments, and tried a bit of every dish they ordered. On the outside, I was the sweet grandmother, celebrating another year. On the inside, every second felt like an hour. Every minute was a reminder that, at that exact moment, someone was trying to steal everything I had. But there was something Sarah didn't know, something Kevin was about to find out. When he finally returned, his face said it all. He walked into the restaurant like a ghost, his skin so pale it looked gray. His hands were visibly shaking as he gripped the back of his chair. His forehead was slick with sweat, even though the air conditioning kept the place cool. Sarah stood up immediately, alarmed. "What happened? What took you so long?" Kevin looked at me, then at Sarah, then back at me. In his eyes, there was something I'd never seen before. Genuine fear, mixed with total disbelief. He opened his mouth twice before the words finally came out, choked and breathless. "Something went wrong. Your mother. The house." He collapsed into the chair as if his legs had given out. Sarah leaned toward him, trying to keep her voice down so Chloe and I wouldn't hear, but I was listening, very closely. "What do you mean something went wrong? Did you do it or not?" "I went there, Sarah. I went with the locksmith you hired. But when we got there," he paused, wiping his hands over his face in a gesture of absolute despair. "The house isn't in your mother's name anymore. There are new owners, people, living there. They showed me the paperwork, all legal, all signed with a lawyer. The sale closed 3 weeks ago." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah froze, her wineglass halfway to her lips. I watched her brain try to process the information, her eyes darting back and forth, trying to make sense of the impossible. Then, slowly, her gaze settled on me. I was still smiling, calm, serene. I took a sip of my sparkling water and placed the glass gently on the table. Chloe was still talking about her travel plans, completely unaware of the bomb that had just gone off. "Mum." Sarah's voice was controlled, but I could feel the tension vibrating in every syllable. "You sold the house." "Yes, dear. I sold it." There was no need to lie, no need to apologize. It was my house, my property. The result of 40 years of working as an RN at Kingston General Hospital, of night shifts that ruined my back, of sacrifices she never knew. Because I'd made sure she had everything she needed. When? Why didn't you tell us? 3 weeks ago. And I didn't have to tell you anything. I didn't need your permission. Kevin was still pale, looking back and forth between us like he was watching a car crash in slow motion. Sarah, on the other hand, was getting her color back, but it wasn't a healthy pink. It was the dark red of pure rage. That house was our inheritance. It was the only thing you were going to leave us. That house was mine, Sarah. Mine. Not yours, not Kevin's. Mine. The words came out firmer than I'd planned. Chloe finally stopped talking and looked at all of us, her face a mask of confusion. You could feel the nearby tables discreetly tuning in. "And where, may I ask? Are you planning to live now?" Sarah's question dripped with sarcasm. "Or did you sell your future, too?" "I have a new condo. Downtown. Smaller, more comfortable, easier to maintain, in a secure building, with 24-hour security. I already moved in 2 weeks ago. And the money from the sale, it's in a GIC ladder and an investment account, well protected, generating interest that will let me live with dignity for the rest of my days." Sarah stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. Kevin tried to stop her, putting a hand on her arm, but she yanked it away. "Do you know what you just did? Do you have any idea how you've betrayed us?" The irony of her words would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. There she was, accusing me of betrayal, when just 50 minutes earlier she'd sent her husband to steal my home. "I didn't betray anyone, Sarah. I protected what was mine." To understand how I got to that moment, sitting in a restaurant watching my own daughter unravel, I need to go back 42 years. I was 28, just widowed, with a 3-year-old girl in my arms. My husband Tom died in a construction accident. A hydro pole wasn't secured properly, a 5-second lapse, and my entire world fell apart. He left me with nothing but debt and a rent check, due in 2 weeks. The company's insurance took months to process, and when it finally came, it barely covered the funeral and the hospital bills. I remember sitting on the floor of our rented room with Sarah asleep in my lap, looking at the 3 bills left in my wallet, a 50 and 2 20s, $90 between us and the street. I got a job as a porter at Kingston General Hospital the next day. I didn't have a degree. I'd barely finished high school, but the shift supervisor saw something in my eyes. Desperation, maybe, or just sheer will. She put me to work cleaning equipment and changing sheets for $7 an hour. Sarah grew up in the waiting rooms of that hospital. She did her homework while I finished the night shift. She learned to read between the smell of disinfectant and the endless beige hallways. By the time she was 8, she knew how to get my order from the cafeteria, a black coffee and a muffin, and carry it to the nurse's lounge without spilling a drop. I worked 16 hours a day, double shifts, triples when they offered them. Every extra dollar meant 1 brick closer to having something of our own. I saved the money in an old biscuit tin, hidden under my mattress because I didn't trust banks. In 3 years, I saved $5,000. With that money, I bought a lot of piece of land with no utilities out near Joyceville. It was so cheap, the seller almost laughed when I asked if the price was real. "Margaret, there's no well or hydro hookup out there. It's just dirt and rocks." I didn't care. It was mine. I hired a builder who agreed to let me pay him weekly. Sunday after Sunday, I'd go see the walls of our house go up. Sarah would come with her doll, sitting on piles of lumber, while I argued with the foreman over every penny. It took us 4 years to finish it. 4 years of sacrifices Sarah never really understood, because by the time we moved in, she was 12 and only vaguely remembered living in rentals. For her, the house was just where we lived. For me, it was the result of blood, sweat, and sleepless nights. I managed to get the hydro connected by paying fees that pained my soul. The well was dug a year later. By then, I was already a registered nurse. I had studied at night, bringing textbooks to the hospital, stealing hours from the sleep my body screamed for. My salary went up from $7 an hour to $15, then to $25. At 40, I was earning $25 an hour and working 60-hour weeks. That money went to food, hydro bills, and Sarah's private high school because I wanted her to have what I never did. She never went hungry. She never wore secondhand clothes. She never had to choose between new notebooks or new shoes. I made sure of that, even if it meant my own shoes had holes in the soles and my nursing uniform was mended in places no one saw. When Sarah turned 18 and announced she was marrying Kevin, an insurance salesman she'd just met, I tried to reason with her. "Wait, honey. Finish a degree first. Have something of your own before you tie yourself to someone." But she was in love, or what one 8-year-old thinks is love. There was no convincing her. I paid for the wedding. $5,000 I had saved to fix the roof, which leaked every time the snow melted too fast. But she was my only daughter, and I wanted her to be happy. So I spent every cent on a white dress, a reception hall, and a meal for 120 guests. Kevin turned out to be exactly what he seemed, a mediocre man with big dreams and little ambition. He sold insurance when clients fell into his lap, and when they didn't, which was most of the time, he lived off Sarah's salary as a receptionist at a dental clinic. They had 2 children, my grandchildren, whom I loved from the moment they were born, but raising 2 kids on a receptionist's salary was impossible, so I helped, always. $50 here, $100 there. I paid for hockey registration, school supplies, winter coats, trips to the dentist when they needed fillings. Sarah never said thank you. She just held out her hand, and I filled the void with bills that represented hours of my life I would never get back. But the house was always mine. That was never in question. It was in my name, paid for with my sweat, built brick by brick with my own decisions. Until Tom died. Not my husband Tom, who had been gone for decades, Tom's brother, Frank. My brother-in-law, who had disappeared from our lives when his brother died and only reappeared 35 years later with a lawyer and a lawsuit. He claimed that the land where I built my house had originally been bought by his father, the father-in-law I barely knew, and that technically there had never been a legal division of the inheritance between the brothers. Therefore, 50% of that property belonged to him. He showed up with yellowed papers, with stamps that looked legitimate, with a lawyer who spoke in technical terms designed to confuse and frighten. He demanded I sell the house and give him half the money, or pay him $75,000 for his share. $75,000 that I didn't have. I spent 2 years in court at the Frontenac County Courthouse, 2 years paying a lawyer with every cent I could scrape together, 2 years sleeping 3 hours a night, working extra shifts to cover the legal fees that ballooned every month like an incurable disease. Sarah, during that time, stayed strangely quiet. She didn't offer financial help. She didn't ask how I was coping. She only showed up every few weeks to ask about the case, about what the lawyers were saying, about the chances of me losing the house. Now I understand why she was so interested. The judge finally ruled in my favor. Frank's papers were clumsy forgeries. The land had been bought legally by me, with my money, without any involvement from my late husband's family. The ruling was clear. The property was 100% mine. But the process cost me $40,000 in legal fees. It cost me 2 years of my life. It cost me my health. I developed high blood pressure from the constant stress. And it cost me something more valuable. It cost me seeing my daughter's true nature. Because when the judge ruled and I walked out of the courtroom crying with relief, Sarah didn't hug me. She didn't celebrate. She looked at me with something in her eyes that took me weeks to identify. It was disappointment. Disappointment because I had won, because the house was still mine, and her silent plan to inherit it soon had vanished. The months that followed were strange. Sarah started visiting more often, but her visits had a purpose I was slow to grasp. She and Kevin would arrive on Sunday afternoons, always with an excuse: the kids wanted to see Grandma. They were just in the neighborhood. But I noticed little things. The way her eyes scanned the rooms, like she was taking inventory. How Kevin would casually ask about the property value now that the neighborhood had improved. The conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered the room. One afternoon while I was making coffee in the kitchen, I heard them talking on the patio. The window was open a crack, and their voices carried. "She's 70, Kevin. She's not going to live forever." It was Sarah's voice, laced with a coldness that chilled my blood. "I know, but we can't just wait." "Wait for what? Why not? It's our legitimate inheritance. I'm an only child. All of this will be ours eventually." Eventually doesn't work for us. The kids need a bigger house now. We need that money now. We're paying rent when we could be living here. I know. Believe me, I know. But I can't just ask her to give me the house. We just got out of a lawsuit where she fought like a lioness to keep it. Then convince her to sell it and give you the money. Or put it in your name. Tell her it's to protect her from future legal problems. There was a long silence. Then Sarah spoke again, her voice calculating. "That could work, but I'd have to do it gradually. First, convince her to live with us for a few months. That the house is too big for her alone. Then suggest she rent it out. And finally what? Finally make her see that the sensible thing to do is transfer it to my name, for her own good, for her safety. I poured the coffee with trembling hands. Every word was a stab. It wasn't that they wanted the house that hurt. It was the manipulation, the coldness with which they planned to disarm me, piece by piece. I went out to the patio with the tray, smiling as if I hadn't heard a thing. They smiled, too. Perfect actors in a play I'd just discovered had been running for months. The following weeks confirmed my suspicions. Sarah started making comments about how lonely I must be in that big house. "Mum, you have 4 bedrooms and you only use 1. Don't you think that's a waste?" Kevin mentioned articles he'd read about seniors having accidents in 2-story houses. "Stairs are dangerous at your age, Margaret. 1 fall and you could end up in the hospital." Senior. That word started appearing frequently, as if my 70 years had automatically turned me into someone incapable of caring for herself. One night, Sarah arrived with a folder full of brochures. "Look, Mum, I've been researching retirement communities, beautiful places. You'd have company, activities, nurses available 24 hours. I don't need nurses. I am a nurse. But you're getting older, and these places are wonderful. Look at this one. It has gardens, a dining hall, even yoga. And how much does this paradise cost?" "Well, it's an investment, about $5,000 a month. But if you sell the house, you'd have more than enough." "I am not selling my house to lock myself away in a luxury retirement home, Sarah." Her face hardened for a split second before she regained her sweet, worried smile. "It's not a home, Mum. It's a community. And I'm not saying now, just consider it. For your own good. For my own good." Those 4 words became the refrain. Everything was for my own good. Moving in with them, selling the house, signing papers, it was all for my own good. But what truly opened my eyes was a conversation I overheard 3 months before my birthday. I'd gone to drop off a toque I'd knitted for my youngest grandson. I rang the bell, but no one answered, even though Kevin's car was in the driveway. The door was ajar, so I went in, calling their names. Their voices came from the study. They were on speakerphone with someone who had a cold, professional tone. "So what you're suggesting, Rick, is that we wait for her to have a temporary health issue. Something that incapacitates her." It was Kevin's voice. "Exactly," said the man, Rick. "An accident, a hospitalization, a bad flu. Something that justifies her needing help managing her affairs. At that moment, you would file an application for temporary guardianship, presenting evidence that your mother cannot make decisions on her own." "But is that legal?" Sarah asked. "I mean, she's perfectly fine now, clear-headed, independent." "That's why I said temporarily. A judge could grant you guardianship for 6 months, renewable. During that time, you would have legal power of attorney for property. You could sell property, manage bank accounts, make medical decisions. And if she objects? If you can demonstrate that she's not in a condition to object rationally, her objection would carry no legal weight. You'd need medical evaluations, testimonies from neighbors about erratic behavior, that sort of thing." "Erratic behavior. That we could suggest," Kevin said slowly. "I'm not suggesting anything," the lawyer replied. "But let's say that if several neighbors reported concerns about forgetfulness, confusion, personal neglect, that would strengthen your case. And what would your fees be?" $5,000 up front. Another $10,000 when guardianship is granted. $15,000 total, which you'd easily recover with the sale of the property. I left that house without making a sound, the toque still in my hands, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I walked the 4 blocks to my house. I didn't trust myself to drive. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room, looking at the walls I had seen built, thinking about every sacrifice I had made, and thinking about how my own daughter was planning to take it all away, using the very laws meant to protect me. I didn't cry. Crying was a luxury I couldn't afford. Instead, I started planning. The next day, I hired a different lawyer. I didn't tell him about the conversation. I simply said I needed to protect my assets from possible future conflicts. He recommended several options. A trust, or simply selling and reinvesting the money into something more liquid and protected. I chose to sell. The decision wasn't easy. That house was my entire adult life. Every corner held a memory. The paint stain on the hallway wall where Sarah tried to draw butterflies at age 6. The mark on the kitchen doorframe where I measured her height every birthday. The garden I had cultivated, where the roses Tom loved grew. But memories don't pay off corrupt lawyers. Feelings don't stop ambitious daughters. I hired a real estate agent a coworker from KGH recommended. Her name was Janice Murray, a woman in her 50s with shrewd eyes and a direct way of speaking I liked. Mrs. Thompson, Margaret, this property is worth between $450,000 and $500,000 in the current market. The neighborhood has improved a lot. I need it to be fast and discreet. Janice looked at me with that expression women who've seen enough of the world get. I understand. Family issues. You could say that. Seen it before. Kids who suddenly get very interested in their parents' well-being when they smell an inheritance. Don't worry, I can have this sold in 3 weeks if you accept a fair price. How much? 47,500美元. There's a young couple, doctors doing their residency at KGH, looking in this area. They have their financing ready. They just need the right house. Yours is perfect. 3 weeks. That was the time I had to dismantle 40 years of my life. Do it. We signed the papers that afternoon. Janice explained every clause. The sale would be firm, closing in less than a month. And where do you plan to move? She asked, putting the documents in her briefcase. I don't know yet. Something small. Safe. Where no one knows where I am. I know a building. Downtown, on the waterfront. Condos, not a retirement home. Independent living, but with 24-hour security, cameras, a concierge. A lot of retired professionals live there. I can get you a 1-bedroom rental for about $1,800 a month. I can see it today. We went that same afternoon. The building was modern, with a clean facade and a small garden. The concierge greeted Janice by name. The apartment on the 3rd floor was empty and smelled of fresh paint. A small living room with a window facing the lake. A galley kitchen with new appliances. A bedroom big enough for my bed, and a bathroom with grab bars already installed. It's perfect. You don't want to think about it? There's nothing to think about. I'll take it. I signed the lease that day, paying first and last month's rent with money from my savings. $3,600 that pained me to withdraw, but it was an investment in my freedom. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was the Margaret that Sarah knew. The available mother, the sweet grandmother, the older woman who supposedly needed help. At night, I packed in secret. Clothes, documents, photos, the few objects I couldn't leave behind. Sarah continued to visit, each time more frequently, always with Kevin, always with that fake concern. They brought me food I hadn't asked for, offered to make repairs to the house that weren't needed, and constantly asked about my health. Mom, you look tired. Are you sleeping well? Perfectly, dear. It's just, you seem distracted. Yesterday you called me and said the same thing twice. Did I? Really? I don't remember. I was lying. I knew exactly what she was doing. She was building her narrative, documenting symptoms they would later use against me. Every visit was a mental record of supposed forgetfulness, confusion, signs of decline that existed only in her imagination. Kevin took photographs. He thought I didn't notice, but I saw him take out his phone and snap pictures of the inside of the house, the furniture, everything they would later claim as the family inheritance. 2 days before the sale closed, Sarah arrived with a proposal. Mom, Kevin and I have been thinking. How would you feel about coming to live with us for a few months? Just to try it out. You could stay in the guest room. You'd have company. And what would happen to this house? We could rent it out. Get some extra income for you. I'd take care of finding tenants, collecting the rent, everything. You would just have to enjoy being with family. It was so obvious it hurt. Once I was living with them, once the house was rented, likely in Sarah's name, it would be a matter of time before they took it permanently. Let me think about it. There's not much to think about, Mum. It's for your own good. There it was again. Give me a week. A week then. But think about it seriously. You shouldn't be living alone anymore. At your age, anything can happen. They left, and I finished packing. I hired a small moving company, one of those cash-only guys. I paid them $500 to move everything to the new condo on a day I knew Sarah would be working. The sale closed on a Tuesday afternoon at the lawyer's office. The buying couple, Michael and Priya, were exactly what Janice had promised. Young, hopeful, with a baby on the way. "We will take very good care of your house, Mrs. Thompson," Priya said with genuine sincerity. "We can feel all the love in it." I almost cried, but I held firm, smiled, and signed every paper. The bank transfer arrived in my account while we were still there. $475,000, minus Janice's commission and legal fees. I was left with just over $450,000. "What do you plan to do with the money?" the lawyer asked. "Invest it in something that will give me peace." That same afternoon, I opened 3 different accounts: a JIC ladder that would generate secure interest, an emergency savings account with $50,000 that no one could touch without my physical authorization at the bank, and a normal checking account, all under my name only, no joint signers, no beneficiaries. My lawyer made sure every account was protected. In case of illness, the bank had to contact him directly, not any family member. Any attempt at guardianship or power of attorney would have to go through him first, and he had strict instructions to fight it. It cost me another $2,000 in legal fees, but it was worth every cent. The move to the new condo was almost anticlimactic. My new life began with a silence I hadn't experienced in years, the silence of possibility. I knew it wouldn't last. During the first week, I established a routine: breakfast by the window, watching the lake, a walk along the waterfront every morning. I had given my new phone number only to my lawyer and Janice. I kept my old phone active but left it in a drawer, checking it once a day for Sarah's messages. "Mom, I stopped by, but you weren't there. Where are you?" "Mom, I need to talk to you about what we discussed. When can I visit?" "Mom, I'm worried. You're not answering my calls. Are you okay?" I waited hours, sometimes a day, before sending short, vague replies. "I'm fine, dear. Busy with some personal matters." Nothing that gave her real information. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Sarah got impatient. "Mom, I need to see you. It's urgent. We have to talk about your future." My future? As if she had any right to it. It was Kevin who finally showed up at the house, or what had been my house. Michael, the new owner, called me one afternoon, confused. "Mrs. Thompson? There's a man here who says he's your son-in-law. He's demanding to come in, says he needs to pick up some of your things." I explained the house is no longer yours, but he insists there's a mistake. "There is no mistake, Michael. The house is completely yours. My son-in-law has no right to it. If he keeps bothering you, call the police." "Are you sure?" He seems very upset. "Completely sure. It's possible more people will appear making similar claims. Please do not let them in. You have nothing to worry about." I hung up and poured myself a cup of tea, my hands perfectly steady. So, they had found out. My old phone began to ring non-stop, call after call from Sarah, from Kevin. I didn't answer. The voicemails piled up. "Mom, what did you do? You sold the house without telling us? How could you?" Disbelief and fury. "Margaret, we need to talk. Urgently. This is very serious. You've made a terrible mistake." Kevin trying to sound authoritative, only sounding desperate. The last message was the most revealing. Sarah had stopped pretending. "You know what, Mom? This isn't going to stand. That house was our inheritance. We worked for that. We took care of you, expecting you to be fair. You can't just sell it and keep all the money. We are going to fight this legally. Kevin has already spoken to a lawyer. We have rights." Rights. What an interesting word. I deleted the messages and turned off the phone. The next day, Sarah showed up at KGH. She asked for me at HR, demanding my contact information. The shift supervisor, Brenda, who knew me well, politely explained that information was confidential. "She's my mother. She's 70, she sold her house, and no one knows where she is. She could be in danger." Brenda called me that afternoon on my new number, laughing. "Margaret, your daughter came in here making a scene. Is everything all right?" "Perfectly fine, Brenda. Just a daughter who can't accept that her mother still has the right to make her own decisions." "Ah, one of those. If you need anything, you call me." But they didn't give up. They started looking for me. They went to the church I used to attend, the supermarket, and to Chloe's house. Chloe called me, concerned. "Aunt Margaret, Sarah was here. She says you sold your house and disappeared. She's really worried." "I'm fine, Chloe. I just made some decisions about my life that Sarah didn't like." "You sold the house?" "Yes." "Aunt, what really happened?" "Sarah is really upset. She says you're going to fight this legally." I told her. Not everything, but enough. The conversation I'd overheard about guardianship, the plans to manipulate me, the corrupt lawyer. Chloe was silent for a long time. I can't believe she's capable of that. She's your daughter. Precisely why it hurt so much. What are you going to do now? Nothing. I already did what I had to do. I protected my assets, I secured my independence, and now I'm going to live my life in peace. 3 weeks of silence passed. That silence made me more nervous than the calls. It meant she was planning. My lawyer, Mr. Cohen, called me one Friday. Mrs. Thompson, I received a notification. Your daughter has filed an application with the court. She is alleging concern for your mental well-being and your capacity to manage your financial affairs. There it was, exactly what I had heard them plan. What does she specifically allege? That you sold your property impulsively, that you've shown signs of confusion and cognitive decline, that you've socially isolated yourself. She's requesting a mandatory psychological evaluation and a hearing to determine if you need temporary guardianship. How serious is this? It depends on the judge. We will need to prepare a solid defense. We'll need an independent psychological evaluation that demonstrates your capacity, and it would be useful to have witnesses. When is the hearing? In 3 weeks. But before that, the judge has ordered a visit from a social worker to your residence to assess your living conditions. But Sarah doesn't know where I live. According to the documents, she alleges she has no knowledge of your whereabouts, which she's using as more evidence of your decline. A person in their right mind wouldn't disappear from their only family. How convenient. Mrs. Thompson, I need to ask, is there any possibility your daughter is right? Any moments of real confusion? I'm 70. Sometimes I forget where I left my glasses, but my mind is perfectly clear. I sold my house because I discovered my daughter planned to steal it. I moved without telling her because I don't trust her. Those aren't the actions of a confused person. They are the actions of a person protecting herself. Then that is exactly what we will say. The psychological evaluation was 3 days later. Dr. Evans, a forensic psychiatrist, gave me tests for memory, reasoning, and orientation. Mrs. Thompson, your results are well above average for your age. There is no evidence of cognitive decline or incapacity of any kind. From a clinical point of view, you are completely capable of managing your own affairs. The social worker, a Miss Tremblay, arrived on a Tuesday. She was a young woman with a tablet and a neutral expression. She toured the condo, checked the kitchen, the bathroom. She opened the fridge and saw it was stocked. She saw my medications were organized. The apartment was clean and organized. You live alone here? Yes. Who helps you with shopping, cleaning, food? No one. I do it myself. Why did you move from your previous home? Because I discovered my daughter planned to take it from me, using questionable legal means. I sold the property to protect my assets and moved here to have peace. Miss. Tremblay looked up from her tablet, her eyes showing real interest for the first time. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. I overheard a conversation between my daughter, her husband, and a lawyer discussing how to obtain guardianship over me based on supposed mental problems that I do not have. I took preventative measures. Do you have evidence of that conversation? My word. And the fact that they are now doing exactly what they planned to do. Miss, Tremblay wrote for several minutes. Mrs. Thompson, I have evaluated dozens of cases like this. Most are genuine situations where a senior needs help, but some, she paused. Some are family members trying to take control of assets. I believe you are perfectly capable of living independently. My report will reflect that. 2 weeks later was my 70th birthday. I hadn't planned to celebrate, but Chloe insisted. Aunt, you can't let Sarah steal your birthday too. We'll have a small lunch, just us. She was right. I chose a small restaurant downtown, near my condo. Chloe arrived with a small chocolate cake and a hug. Happy birthday, Aunt. 70 years of being the strongest woman I know. We were about to order coffee when I saw them. Sarah and Kevin walked into the restaurant. It wasn't a coincidence. The way Sarah scanned the room, the determined look on her face. They had come looking for me. My gaze locked on Chloe, who instantly went pale. Aunt Margaret, I didn't. She called me this morning. I told her no, but she must have checked my phone. She saw your messages. I am so sorry. I didn't have time to respond. Sarah was at our table. "Mum, what a surprise to find you here." Her voice dripped sarcasm, celebrating with Chloe, but not with your own daughter. "I'm not surprised you came uninvited. It seems to be your specialty." Kevin pulled a chair from another table. They both sat down. "We need to talk, Mum." Sarah placed her purse on the table like she was marking territory. "We have nothing to talk about." "Oh no? How about how you sold the family house without telling us? How about how you disappeared? How about the fact that you are acting completely irrational?" "Irrational?" "Interesting you use the same word your lawyer used in the court documents." Her face tensed. "I filed those documents because I am genuinely worried about you." "Any daughter who wanted to steal from her mother, you mean?" Chloe gasped. Kevin shifted. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do. I know about the lawyer, Rick. I know about the plan to get guardianship. I know you plan to have me declared incompetent to take my assets. The only thing you didn't know is that I found out first." The silence was thick. The nearby tables were all watching. "You're paranoid," Sarah finally said. "That's exactly the kind of thinking that shows you need help, imagining conspiracies. It's not paranoia when it's true. And I didn't have to imagine it. I heard it. From your mouth." Kevin leaned in. "Margaret, I understand you're upset, but you sold a property worth almost $500,000 without consulting anyone. You moved without leaving an address. These are worrying behaviors in someone your age. Worrying behaviors. It was my house, bought with my money. I didn't need to consult anyone, and I moved without leaving an address precisely because I knew you would do this. Manipulate me, pressure me, try to control me." "No one wants to control you, Mum." Sarah switched to her sweet voice. "We just want what's best for you. We love you. If you loved me, you would respect my decisions. If you loved me, you wouldn't have hired a lawyer to plan how to strip me of my autonomy." "That's your version," Sarah snapped, her voice rising. "A version distorted by your age, by the stress, by the natural confusion that comes with aging." There it was, the narrative, the confused old woman. "I'm not confused, Sarah. I'm clearer-headed than I've been in years. And what I see clearly is that you plan to steal everything from me. No one was going to steal anything." Her voice was loud now. "That house was your inheritance for us, for your family. You sold it and kept all the money." And there was the truth. "It was my money, Sarah, not your inheritance. Not until I die. And apparently, you couldn't wait." "Don't say that. That's horrible." "Horrible? You know what's horrible? Having your own daughter plan to declare you incompetent to strip you of everything you worked 40 years for. That is horrible." Kevin leaned forward. "Look, Margaret, let's be practical. You sold the house, fine. But that money, it's too much for a person your age to manage. You could be scammed. You could lose it. Let us help you manage it. We can open a joint account. I can advise you." "Secure for whom? For me or for you?" "For everyone. We're family. Family doesn't plan to betray each other." Sarah slammed her palm on the table, making the silverware rattle. "Enough. This is ridiculous. Mum, you're coming with us. Right now. We'll go to your condo, you'll get your things, and you'll come live with us where we can properly care for you." "I'm not going anywhere with you." "I'm not asking. I'm telling you. And I'm telling you that you have no right over me. I am an adult woman in full mental capacity." "The hearing is in 5 days," Kevin said, his voice cold. "The judge is going to hear all the evidence we have. The neighbors from your old house who reported seeing you disoriented. The hospital staff who noticed changes in your behavior. It's all documented. Lies. All of it. Let them present what they want. I have my own evidence, psychological evaluations that prove my capacity, social worker reports that confirm I live independently, and above all, I have the truth." "The truth?" Sarah laughed, a bitter sound. "Your truth is that you're stubborn and refusing to accept that you need help. That's not truth, Mum. That's your ego." I stood up. Chloe did the same, standing beside me. "I have been doing things alone for 70 years, Sarah. I raised a daughter alone. I built a house alone. And I am going to end my days as I choose. And that means keeping my dignity." "Mum, please." For the first time, her voice trembled. Maybe with frustration that her plan had failed. "It doesn't have to be this way." "You can what? Stop trying to control me? Respect that I own my own life?" No, Sarah, you can't, because you never saw me as a person. You only saw me as an inheritance. I took out my wallet and left 4 $20 bills on the table, enough to cover our bill and a generous tip. Happy birthday to me, I said. Chloe, let's go. This isn't over, Margaret. Kevin stood up too. Do it. But while you were planning how to steal from me, I was already protecting myself. The money is in accounts you can't touch. My condo is a rental. And I have clear legal instructions on what to do if you try this again. That sounds like paranoia, Mum. It sounds like intelligence, Sarah. Something you clearly underestimated in me. We left the restaurant. The 5 days until the hearing were the longest of my life. Mr. Cohen prepared me exhaustively. They are going to try to paint you as a confused, stubborn old woman, he warned. Their strategy depends on making the judge see you as incapable. You have to prove the opposite. The morning of the hearing, I dressed in a gray suit. I arrived at the Frontenac County Courthouse half an hour early. Sarah and Kevin arrived with their lawyer, a Mr. Davies who looked like a shark. They didn't look at me. The courtroom was small and formal. The judge, Justice Sinclair, entered. Good morning. We are here to evaluate the application for guardianship filed by Miss Sarah Thompson over her mother, Mrs. Margaret Thompson. Mr. Davies, you may begin. Davies stood up. Your Honor, we are here because a concerned daughter has noticed alarming changes in her mother's behavior. Mrs. Thompson, 70, has made impulsive and irrational financial decisions. She sold her family property, valued at nearly $500,000, without consulting her only family. She moved without leaving a contact address. She has cut off communication. These are behaviors that suggest cognitive decline. I remained calm. We have testimonies from neighbors who reported erratic behavior. Mrs. Thompson seen wandering, confused about the day, forgetting conversations. Lies. All lies. We request that temporary guardianship be granted to my client to protect her mother's interests. It is not about control, but about ensuring her decisions are supervised by someone who loves her. The judge turned to Mr. Cohen. Defense. Mr. Cohen stood. Your Honor, what we have heard is a narrative constructed to justify the control of a perfectly capable woman's assets. My client is not a confused old woman. She is a retired RN with 40 years of experience and completely intact mental capacity. He placed the documents on the judge's table. Here we have the psychological evaluation from Dr. Evans. The results show Mrs. Thompson has cognitive capacity above average for her age. No sign of dementia or incapacity. The judge reviewed the documents. We also have the report from social worker Miss Tremblay, who visited my client's current residence and found her living independently in optimal conditions. She manages her own finances, nutrition, and personal care. Mr. Cohen paused. The truth, Your Honor, is that Mrs. Thompson discovered her daughter planned to gain control of her assets using this exact mechanism. She took intelligent, rational, preventative measures to protect what is hers. That is absurd, Davies interrupted. Let him finish, counsel, the judge said. My client is willing to testify, Mr. Cohen finished. A woman who can plan the sale of a property, find a new residence, and manage complex financial investments is not a woman who needs guardianship. She is a woman who needs her family to respect her autonomy. The judge looked at me. Mrs. Thompson, I would like to hear from you. Why did you sell your house? I stood. My voice was firm. I sold it, Your Honor, because I heard my daughter and her husband planning exactly this. I heard a conversation where they discussed with a lawyer how to obtain guardianship, how to fabricate evidence of incapacity, and how to take control of my property. I wasn't going to wait. I protected myself. That is a lie! Sarah stood up. Mom, how can you say that? Silence, the judge ordered. Mrs. Thompson, sit down. Mrs. Thompson, Senior, continue. I worked 40 years as an RN at KGH. I raised my daughter alone. I built my house with my own money. I am not a woman who makes impulsive decisions. Every decision I've made has been thought out. And your daughter? You don't believe she could be genuinely concerned? If she were concerned, she would have respected my decision. She would have celebrated that I secured my financial future. Instead, she hired a lawyer and filed for guardianship. Those are not the actions of a concerned daughter, Your Honor. They are the actions of someone furious because she lost access to an inheritance she believed was hers. The room was silent. The judge looked at Mr. Davies. Counsel, do you have concrete evidence of this mental decline, medical evaluations, anything beyond anecdotal testimonies? Davies hesitated. Your Honor, we have the testimonies of neighbors. Do you have sworn affidavits from these neighbors? Verifiable names? We are in the process of. Are they testimonies your client related to you secondhand? Answer the question, counsel. Do you have verifiable affidavits or not? Not at this moment, Your Honor. The judge closed the folder with a dry thud. I have reviewed all the documentation. The psychological evaluation shows complete mental capacity. The social worker's report confirms she lives independently. I see no concrete evidence to justify guardianship. What I do see, the judge continued, is a 70-year-old woman who made intelligent decisions to protect her assets from what she perceived as a threat. Whether that perception is correct or not, she had every legal right to sell her property, move where she wanted, and manage her money as she saw fit. She did not need anyone's permission. He looked directly at Sarah. Miss Thompson, I understand you may be concerned, but concern is not a legal basis for removing the autonomy of a competent person. Your mother has demonstrated she is in full command of her faculties. This application is denied. The bang of the gavel echoed. Case closed. I walked out of that courtroom with my head held high. Mr. Cohen shook my hand. You did perfectly, Mrs. Thompson. Thank you, doctor, for everything. What will you do now? Live. Simply live. And I did. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Sarah tried to contact me 3 more times. I ignored the messages. Eventually, she stopped. Chloe visited every 2 weeks. She told me Sarah and Kevin had to move to a smaller apartment. They couldn't afford their rent. That the children asked about me, but Sarah told them Grandma was sick. Another lie. My life in the condo became a comfortable routine. Walks by the lake. I made friends. One of them, Eileen, told me her own story. Her son had tried to put her in a home to get her house. She fought him, and now lived 3 floors above me. Our children, she told me over tea, they don't understand sacrifice. They think about how to take what we have. She was right. With the money from the sale, my $1,500 pension from the hospital and CPP, and the $1,500 in interest from my investments, I had $3,000 a month. More than enough to live comfortably and pay my $1,800 rent. I signed up for painting classes at the community center. A year after the hearing, I received a letter. It was from Sarah. Mom, I know I have no right to ask, but Kevin and I are going through serious financial difficulties. The kids need school supplies. I ask you, not as your daughter but as the mother of your grandchildren, to consider helping us. Just this once. Just this once. The same words she'd used dozens of times before. I tore up the letter. 2 months later, I heard from Chloe that Sarah had gotten a part-time job back at the dental office, and Kevin was actually working hard to sell insurance, forced by necessity. Do you think she'll ever apologize? Chloe asked. I don't know, and honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. I don't need her apology to live in peace. On my 71st birthday, Chloe organized a small celebration in my condo. Eileen and 3 other friends from the building came. We ate cake, drank wine, and laughed. To us, Eileen toasted, to the women who refused to be invisible, who fought for what was theirs, who chose dignity. To us, we all repeated. That night, alone, I stood at my window, looking at the lights over the water. 71 years old. 43 years a widow. 70 years of learning that true love is respect. That family isn't blood, it's who respects your decisions. That growing old doesn't mean becoming invisible. It means accumulating the wisdom to know when to protect yourself. I thought about the house I built. And I thought about how, in the end, losing it was what saved me. Because what mattered wasn't in those walls, it was in me. In my capacity to get up one more time, in my determination not to let anyone, not even my own blood, strip me of my dignity. I touched the cold glass, 71 years old, and I was just learning to live for myself. It's never too late to choose your own peace.